Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, a citizen of the universe and a passage keeper and mentor for our new Earth children. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality, and it is meant to embody deeper trust and ways into solid self-love and fearless integrity. Our new world energy of spirit babies needs us to consciously create within conception, trust pregnancy, and have freedom to birth and parent from innate wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 226, October 2025. Light communication, living and loving after the loss of Benjamin. How do you live your best life after a stillbirth? What about 15 years later? How does healing find the self forward and trust life again? I have a special guest here. Hello, special guest.
Hi.
Alana Sheeren is a writer, energy worker, TED Talk speaker, mom, and author of the mindfulness journal, 30 Days of Noticing. Her writing has been seen in publications such as Business Insider, HuffPost, PBS's Next Adventure, and Hip Mama Zine. She holds an MA in clinical and community psychology from Antioch University, Los Angeles, and for more than 13 years has helped clients move stuck energy with a specific form of energy and space clearing. Her unique blend of compassion, insight, and expertise creates a warm, judgment-free space for deep exploration and self-realization. She lives by the ocean in Ventura with her husband and snaggle-toothed rescue dog, where she prones to taking endless sunset photos and singing the wrong lyrics to the 80s song. I love that. Yeah, I like that. You add a little comedy to your bio. So thank you for being here. And something I forgot to mention is that how did you come to this space? And I was introduced through a friend, and we go back to Antioch days. And so I was like, maybe we passed each other's paths and didn't even know it. And I wanted to share, your beautiful love story, really, and your hardship and loss, and also the things that have come through that. I just, you know, everybody I cheated. We talked a little bit before, but I'm like, wow, this is really incredible. And I know that we become some kinds of alchemizers, right, when we've gone through different experiences. And so um, I want you to share just about like who you are a little bit, like yeah. And then I want to hear about your experience with Benjamin and loss. And we're honoring of October is Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month. And yesterday or the other day, a few days ago at this point, was Remembrance Day, the wave of light and the remembrance of our children. So yes, thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Kelly. Um, yeah, so I feel like who I am because I am the mother of my daughter who is alive and my son who is not. Um, the two of them have, the intensity of being a parent and the intensity of grief after loss. I feel like I've been forged by both of those things, forged by fire. Um, it led me to do energy work. It led me to back to my writing, back to my dancing. I had given both of those things up, back to creativity, really, in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, I feel like I owe everything I am right now, and I like who I am right now to my daughter and my son. And
Mm.
I also had two first trimester losses in addition to Ben's stillbirth. Um, and and I learned a lot from those too. So they were different. They were less intense for me than the late term loss. But yeah,
Was
alchemy is
this
a good word.
before, yeah, was this before in between like because I know with losses some women feel like it's before they ever have children or it's in between the children. Like where does that fall for you?
So my very first pregnancy was first trimester loss. I was in graduate school getting my master's in clinical psychology, and so that was my first experience of pregnancy, and that was hard, you know. But then I got pregnant with my daughter, and honestly, it's a miracle she was born. Like we felt her energy come through before we got pregnant with her, and she really wanted to be born because
Oh, yeah.
I, yeah, she just, there were lots of things that happened during my pregnancy that was like, wow, that could have gone really wrong. That could have gone really wrong. Um, I went from having a planned home birth to a scheduled cesarean because she wouldn't turn, and they found out that I had a bicornuate uterus, which is why she didn't turn. And not only that, they had done a manual version. They had tried to flip her
Oh,
manually, and the doctor's
wow.
biceps were like this big. They were huge, and he was
Mm,
shaking. And I am so lucky that my uterus didn't burst in that moment, right? Like
wow.
she was just
Yes.
a miracle baby. Um,
Mm.
so she was my rainbow, and then I had another miscarriage, and then I got pregnant with Ben. And because I had had a miscarriage and then my daughter, I was like, when I had that third pregnancy that ended in miscarriage, I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll have the next one. Like I just had this sort of like, oh, this is my pattern. Um, and it was such a difficult pregnancy with Ben. I bled through a lot of it. I had multiple trips to the ER, wondering if it was done, and it wasn't. There was always like this turnaround. Um, I went and saw my doctor at one point, and he said, okay, this baby's heart rate is really, really low. You need to you do whatever you can this weekend to just like if like just rest and take care of yourself and imagine that he's going to be alive, whatever. I didn't know it was heme
Yeah,
at that time,
yeah.
but and so it was this roller coaster ride. It was a complete roller coaster ride, and I was parenting a 2-year old at the time. And so then I started to bleed, was in the ER 3 times over 3 weeks, and then the last time I had a full placental abruption.
Wow.
So, and that's how things ended, and that's how things began because the
Mm,
experience. First of all, I had a friend come do Reiki for me while I was bleeding, and every time she came and did Reiki, the bleeding would stop, and then a few days
wow.
later it would start again, and I was like, "Ooh, there's something to this,
Yeah.
right?" Um, And then when I was in the hospital, my husband was traveling for work. My daughter was actually, we were staying at friends because I was on bed rest. And so our friends had just taken us in. They were new friends. We'd moved to a new community the fall before. We didn't know anybody very well. They had 3 kids, including a newborn, and they just said, come live with us,
Mm,
which was amazing. Um, so my daughter was with them, and I was alone. I had called my husband. I was alone. The nurses had left me alone, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. And there was such a powerful feeling of not being alone in that moment that I was like, okay, there's something going on that I can't see, but I want to know what this is. Um, and so that was the night, my husband flew in, and I waited for my doctor to come in, and we went into emergency surgery, and there was just nothing that could be done. With the placental abruption, there was just too much bleeding. So what happened then was this new community that we had moved into just rallied around us, fed us, helped
mm,
take care of our daughter, and um, allowed us to grieve, like gave us space to grieve, and really held us in it. And then I just was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm parenting a toddler for the first time in my life, and I'm grieving another child. Like, how do I
mm,
do this? And so I
mm-hmm.
let my body really lead me. And it was I would cry when I needed to cry. I would laugh when I needed to laugh. I would dance when I needed to dance. Like there were so many nights where I was just in my nightie after my daughter went to bed and I would just put some music on and cry
Mm,
and just let the grief move through me. Um, and I wrote every day. I had a journal online. I had a blog at the time. And I just wrote about grief every day, like the little things that are so easy to forget. Um, but that are so beautiful when you go back,
mm.
like the things my daughter said and did. And I don't know, it's just such a grief is a fire that burns away everything unnecessary. You know, I have
Mm.
everything that isn't serving us. And that's I just felt like I was walking through fire. And it was all I could do to get through the day. But I'm so glad I did because getting through the day and allowing the grief to move through me is what brought me here.
There's a few
Yeah.
things you said I want to reverse back for those that are tuning in. You talked about the shape of your uterus. What was that called again? I've heard of this before.
Uh, oh, so
Yeah.
it's actually fairly common. So when the
Yeah.
uterus develops in utero,
Yeah.
when I was in utero, it starts with
Yeah.
two cells, and those cells usually become one. But in a lot of people, it doesn't. It can either stay two cells and you have two uteruses, or it can grow into what's called a heart-shaped uterus, and the wall doesn't
Yes.
completely dissolve. So that's what happened with me. So my daughter's head was on one side and her feet
Wow.
were on the other. And so there was no space for her to move.
So I want to like just kind of spotlight that for a moment because I wasn't sure what the name was that I've always called it a heart-shaped uterus. But you know this your more biology makes sense. And I worked with a woman. This is really fascinating because I know those that are tuning in may have the same kind of heart-shaped uterus. That she had two breech babies, by the way, which is so rare. Like I've never even met anybody, and I thought that's interesting. And I was working with her because she really wanted to do cesarean breech birth, and so we were working together before and after with that. And this was so long ago, and then I found out when my parents have passed, but when they were alive, my father told me that my mom had a heart-shaped uterus, and I thought that's interesting. Like I never knew that because she had a lot of miscarriages before my older brother. And, back in the 70s, nobody's like, they're just like, they don't have the technology like we do now. And they
Yeah.
told her after him she would never have any kids. And then I come along. But by the way, I was breech, which is interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
then a third came along. So I don't know. This is why I'm like, you know what? Like, this is why I know many that follow and tune into is like, you know what? We have so many like different shapes of organs and different things, sorry, come up and I just never know.
Yeah, exactly. And it can cause a lot of miscarriages for sure. Um, it it can cause problems and it can be totally fine. Like some
Yeah, I
people
I
don't
love
have a
that you're
problem at
saying
all.
that because it's like this is like really good to hear because we get so scared, It's like my body, but you don't know. And you have been through a lot of energy, I'd say, in that sacral, in the womb space. And then yeah, and then your daughter's here, and then you have that. And something else you talked about, I'd love to hear a little bit more about. And I think it's very powerful what you said about sometimes after loss, nobody wants to do anything. You're just listless, and maybe the world is colorless and there's no flavor to it. But writing, no matter what, like writing, like the good and the bad, not just like, okay, I'm in this dark place, but also like you're looking at your daughter, who I know that feeling of like bright light and joy because her energy's in such a different space. And then you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, like, and what an amazing, experience in the sense of like, I do think it gives and changes the whole experience of connection. And of course she knew at a young age, but very differently that he was not here either, right? And then yet at her mind and her level, it was whatever it needed to be because I'm sure as she got older, it was probably brought more into a present space of awareness or what that connection is for her. But I want to hear, you did talk about knowing the connection with your daughter, like you felt it, you sensed it. Can you remember or recall like any dreams, or was it more like intuition or thought, or what was that for you?
Yeah, so with her, it was literally I felt like there was an energy hanging out around the house, like waiting for the right time.
Yeah.
Um, and I can remember one time my husband and I were out on the deck at our house in Los Angeles where we used to live, and I was like, I can
Mm.
feel an energy. I think it's a baby. And he's like, I can too.
Oh, I love
So,
that.
yeah, she just really, really wanted to come in. And I don't know exactly why. I mean, she's 18 now, and so
Oh, yeah.
we'll see. But all of her life, people have said, like she's here for a reason. We can feel it.
Yeah.
And even if they don't know the story. So I don't know exactly what the reason is. I hope it's a good one, right? Like I hope
I think
it's
children will, here's how I look at it, honestly, like from babies to children, we come in with kind of themes. And then
mhm.
our purpose is always changing. And so I do feel like, I mean, I read children, so I'm like I've seen these like really, and it could be just simple things even too, as healers, teachers, protectors. And then you see them like just do that out in the world. They become, and 18, I know is a big deal. It's like an initiation in Earth. It's an initiation in Earth in America. Like now you're going out, like becoming more of whoever your kind of beingness is. And then you do get to watch that because it's like, the tether is less, separate and go be free, my bird. But just the
Right.
freedom of and knowing the heart and the love and the attachment you created, it's like you get to see that. And I'm sure there's definitely grief in that for sure. A celebration of newness and
Yes, yes, there is grief in not having her in my daily life, like right there, so I can hug her and be in her presence. But there's also such excitement to watch her thrive. Um, and I really feel like she was shaped by the fact that we were a grieving family when she was very little.
yeah.
Um, and I wrote a piece that went viral on Huffington Post. It had almost 1 million views in the first 24 hours. And it was about her because we would go places and she would go up to strangers and say, our baby died. And
Wow.
then I would have to have this really like some people would be like,
Mm. Yeah,
oh, and
yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of walk away. And other people would really open and engage. And I ended up having all of these beautiful conversations with strangers about grief. And I heard their stories, their mother or their husband or their partner or their child. Like I heard all these beautiful stories, and it was like this really magical way of this child just sort of
Mm,
she was my black armband, right? Like people used to wear black armbands when they were grieving.
mm,
And in some ways I wish we had something like that, but she was my black armband. She would just go up and say to people,
wow.
guess what? Our baby died, because she was really sad to not be a big sister. She
Mm,
was
yeah,
really, really sad about it. And for a long time, she kept asking, like, am I going to be a big sister?
yeah.
And at that point, after Ben, I didn't want to make any decision for the first year. I wanted to give myself a year, but I knew that I was never going to get pregnant again. Like I didn't know if we would adopt maybe.
So you
But I
felt
didn't,
that, or you like what was, yeah, let's talk about that. I'm curious, because yeah, what happens and then after you're like,
yeah, I always wanted multiple kids. Well, I wasn't sure I wanted kids at all. And then when I did decide I wanted kids, I wanted at least a
you
couple.
sound like
And
me, by the way. I was the same way. I was like, I don't know about this. And then I was like, okay.
yeah, and I loved having my daughter so much. And
Yeah.
I knew that in the direct aftermath of grief, it's not a great time to make any
Yeah.
big decisions. A lot of people do, and I'm not going to judge that at all. I just knew for me, it was like I remember being in the hospital and sitting there with my husband, and when my daughter first came in, and being so grateful that I was alive and that I was
Mm,
able to be her mother. But I was like, I don't want to risk that again.
mm,
I don't want to have to wake up in the middle of the night and say, I hope I come home to her.
wow.
Um, so obviously you never know with life what's going to happen, but I knew that I could take that off the table if I didn't get pregnant
Yeah.
again. And so for me, that was like, okay, well, we could maybe like look into adoption or fostering or anything like that. And after about a year, I didn't need anything else. I was happy to just have
Mm,
her.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so important that you're sharing that because in that grief space, when maybe I'm going to call it like activation of grief is so strong right after. And it feels like trauma for many people, maybe not all, but I don't
Mhm.
know. Most people say it feels like trauma. And unless you're probably in more
Absolutely.
tribal communities where they have a different way of meeting grief from birth. But in, more of these other cultures, I can speak from American culture and it's yeah, there's not a lot. It's just like like secretive or I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff there. So then so then I kind of agree with you in the sense I've worked with many of women that come in the really early stages of just their body field still carries trauma residual energies that I see and I'm going and they think, well, maybe this, and I go, just so you know, that's the grief conversation. That's grief. That's not, it's like I could have, and I'm like, that's grief. We don't recognize it that way because it just feels so real and present. But I was like, but I think, I always tell women, especially women, is tenderness and compassion right now. Can you activate that and just be there? Because I do
Hmm.
feel like we don't want to miss what the healing piece is to that and then suppress it, right? And then deny it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy at all. But I kind of like appreciate you saying it's like you really kind of looked and waited and kind of checked in with yourself. And it is going to be what it, whatever it was for you. Obviously, I'm sure so many different things coming up along the way. Um, but kind of want to go back for a minute. I really maybe in the show notes I can share that article. Is it still here? That article you shared with your daughter and she's like, our baby
Yeah.
said like, oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's
I'll
still
make
on
sure to
HuffPost. Yeah.
include that because I'm very curious too. Um, it reminds me so my mom passed away very traumatically, not good, like fire traumatically, and is
Hmm.
terrible. And she wasn't a well woman to begin with. Not that that makes it better. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, I have this infant, and then I had my 5-year-old. I'm like, what's happening? And then 3.5 weeks later, my brother dies, just supposedly randomly and heart attack. I was like, what is happening to my world? I was like, and having nursing my infant, I was like, it really messed with me because I was like oh wait, like I have to grieve all these people and then I have to nurse and take care of this baby. I was like, but then his beauty and he was so calm. It's like he knew what he was coming into, to be honest. But I'll never forget my
Hmm.
older one. Very innocently, I went to the store and he walked up to the cashier, looked at the cashier, and she says, her brother's dead. And I'm just like, yes, my
Yeah.
brother is dead. That's all I said. And he was going around telling everybody my brother's dead. I was like, okay, like that was his process and that's what he needed. And I don't know what kind of feelings he had because I felt like my children weren't connected really deeply to these family members, that they felt me. They felt me. And I was
Hmm.
in a really, as you know, with two losses like that so close, I was just a weeping mess for like every day, all the time. And I wasn't sure, like, I don't even know who I'm grieving for anymore. I literally was just like, I don't know what's happening. But he did, go around and talk about it. And people like didn't know what to say, they just were like, they got quiet actually. And I just affirmed him every time. I'm like, yeah, my brother's dead. And then I just move on. Like, nobody asked questions. I think they were freaked out. Like, I don't know. But I think it's great to ask questions because it's like, oh, yeah, like just to acknowledge, like, And maybe just like the way she, and it's her way of processing it, right? I mean, that's her way of
Mhm.
we'll call it her own inner therapy, right? Because her brain and it's all about play and connection. What can you say about that? Like what other ways? Could be really good for those who do have siblings and there's loss. Like what did you see with her that helped her actually process and experience? Yeah.
So I would say a couple of things. One was I didn't try to hide my feelings. Um, I didn't want to scare her with my grief. Like
Yeah.
if I was really in it, I would say to my husband, like, can you just take her so I can be in it? And sometimes like that couldn't happen if my husband was on the road or something, but
Mm.
I would just try and narrate it to her in like, mom's really sad now. Mom's missing baby Benjamin. Like, mom is having a really hard time, but everything's going to be okay. Just to narrate those feelings for her so that she would understand what was happening with me. And then I would narrate her emotions for her, right? Like, yeah, you're having a hard time. You're feeling really
Yeah.
sad about not being a big sister. Um, or you're angry about it, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one thing that was important is just to continue to help her feel safe in the world, even though there are these big feelings in our family. Um, I'll never forget one time she was in bed, it's my husband and my daughter and myself, and we were talking about something, and she gave him a kiss and she gave me a kiss on my cheek, and then she kissed my heart and she said, and a kiss for baby Benjamin. And
Oh
I was just like,
my
ugh.
gosh. Wow.
So, but we
Wow.
hadn't been, yeah, we
Yeah.
hadn't really been talking about him. So it's interesting. And now at 18, again, like we mark the anniversary of his stillbirth. We talk about him. I have an ancestor practice
Mm.
where I talk to him all the time, as well as other ancestors. Um, and as she's sort of gone through her teen years, I wasn't sure how much it was kind of up for her. Um, and then when she got Instagram when she was 16, she posted on his birthday, like his stillbirth, like the day that he was born still. She posted about her brother, and I was like, "Oh, it is a meaningful day for her too, in a way that is very much hers." Um, and she wants her first tattoo to be for him.
That's
You know, she's
amazing.
got it
Yeah.
planned out, and I just feel she's an incredibly emotionally intelligent kid, like amazing to me. I don't think I was that emotionally intelligent till I was in my 30s,
Yeah.
right?
Sounds like it, right?
Um, so I feel like part of that is because of the grief. And I definitely had moments where I was a worried mom. Did I mess my kid up? Is there
Yeah.
too much grief? Because I remember there were
Do we
days
all
where
do
she would
that
say,
though? Honestly, like we all do that.
right. Exactly. Days where she was like, Mama's always sad or Mama's always tired. Or, like she would say those things because I wasn't super into playing that day or whatever. And um, I think in the long run, she's fine. And
Yeah. And
she,
you say something
yeah,
like, not that I'm laughing, but I'm literally thinking of a friend who I'm not friends with anymore, who I was friends with a long time, who told me I was too sad. I was like, see you later. I was like, my mom and my brother died. I was like, I'm too sad. Like I didn't know. I had to process it and nursing and having, and I'm just thinking,
so much.
yeah, and it's kind of like with the child, it's very different, but it's like what just such pure honesty though. And not to make it's not make it shouldn't make you feel bad, but maybe it did. And that's your own obviously own lesson around that, but it's just honesty. Like, yeah, like, oh, you're sad. Okay, yeah, I am. And then you're moving into wherever, whatever the next piece is. But I do feel like when there's children, and there's loss, they do sparkle up the energy in a different way. They have a different connection in their brains and their bodies that do bring a whole other level of something you don't even know until it's like really happening. And I do appreciate you sharing that because I feel like we need to hear, like, especially, with siblings, like, yeah, what happens and like, how do they feel? And some of my friends, I have a friend I known years ago. I even stayed in their place during the Woolsey fire. Remember that whole big thing over in
Oh,
LA? We
yes.
got pushed out of Topanga Canyon. And so I ended up staying. This family invited us in, and she had lost her son through a stillbirth. Her daughter was there, and just an amazing family. And she showed me the pictures of her son for the first time, which was a really big deal. And to see the husband's face, and I was just like, and I think she hasn't fully looked at them at that point. Maybe now there was something she was not, but I just felt so honored. Like they were showing me this beautiful little boy, and because they were able to get pictures later and hold him and do all this stuff. And I don't know if you were able to do that, but it was kind of like what an interesting shift in the space. And so every holiday card, they put his name letter, they hold it in the Christmas card. And
Oh,
yeah, and I thought that was really beautiful for their healing and their connection with him. And that the Earth Child, the daughter, she would talk to about her brother in present time. Like they really brought that connection in. And there was something that happened in school once, and she shared it with me. She goes, the teacher was like, if you have a brother, sister, line up here. If you have a sister, line up here. So she went and lined up, and they said, you don't have a sibling. And it was like, uh-oh. And she's like, and then so the mom got to talk to the teacher. It was a very open Waldorf kind of environment. So that she didn't think about it. Like, oh yeah,
mm,
like just because they're not in their earth body doesn't mean there's no sibling. And it was like, it was a good lesson. And I know the intention of the teacher's an amazing woman. She's probably like, oh my goodness, like I didn't really think that through. And so, but I said, well, good for your daughter for standing up and speaking up and saying, you know what? Yeah, yeah, I have a brother. And what I like to say is that, she has a brother in light body. And
mhm.
I call them the children of light. It's just a word I came up with over the years. But I was like, it's just, yeah. So again, I feel like we're going, in this topic of children and our children's connections to their siblings because it is a unique journey. It is special. And I think it's amazing that you got to witness her own process of like wanting to share his birthday with everybody without you being like, oh, you should do this, or and like you said, I think we all are like, am I gonna mess up my kid? Like it, no, you're not gonna mess up your kid. Like I think that for what I feel like when we meet death at a very young age, it really does mature and change consciousness for people for sure. And it's just added, humanness. I actually do feel like even at my old ripe age, people that don't have a lot of death, I don't know, to me, they feel very different. Like it's almost like they just don't really understand I actually, maybe that's my judgment. I just don't feel like they really understand the depth of life in a certain way through that kind of perspective. Um, and I'm always very curious of people like that, to be honest. I'm almost like in awe, like they're an anomaly to me. And I'm like, what would that be like to just never have anybody die in your life? There are some people, maybe some people like that. And it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, my best friend for 24 years, our friendship ended the year after Ben was stillborn because she had never had a big loss. And there were a lot of things that happened, but we could no longer communicate in the same way. And she couldn't understand my grief. And she got really angry at me. She got pregnant again, and it was really hard for me. And it
mm,
was exactly the same timing as Ben. And so I was just like, oof, I needed just a little bit of space. Like, I love you. I'm so happy for you. I want you to be happy. I don't want you to feel like you have to tamp that joy down around me. And so just give me a minute. And and everything exploded. And I really feel like a big part of that was because she had never experienced a big grief at that point. And and it's funny actually because all these years later we've reconnected a bit, but that was another loss. And I think that's, you said that too, like
yes.
you had a friend.
Yes.
I've talked to so many people who
Really?
have lost. either babies or children.
Yeah.
And people have disappeared from their lives because they cannot handle it. They can't handle knowing that it could happen to them. They
Mm-hmm.
can't handle the grief. They want people to get over their sadness. Like, you're
That's
too
what it
sad, like
is.
you
You said
got.
that, like
Yeah.
what you said, it's like, oh, are we done with this? Like, I've seen this with stillbirth loss and infancy loss. Like what do you mean? Like even really like family members like, oh, we're not over it yet. And it's like, wow, like the audacity to even say that. I'd be like, whoa, like, but you pinned
Mhm.
it there. It's like the fear, the inexperience, and really I want to say the fear of like, well, what do I do with you now? You've had this loss and you're in a place that I can't fix, right? That's the piece we struggle with in that it's like, but what if, yeah, you're just kind of sitting, loving, feeding, and doing nothing but just being. This is the piece like I've been learning even throughout the years of my own death experiences and being with others. Many years ago in LA, I ran a grief circle. I have to laugh with a friend, and we both did death midwifery training with Olivia Barham and her death midwifery. And so we're jumping in. We go in Thousand Oaks, and it was right. We had a room full of intense stuff. There was a murder in the room. I'm just like, oh my, it was the shooting. And then I'm like, then someone's like crying because their daughter's dying of cancer. And I'm looking at my friend. We did well, but I was almost like, afterwards we were talking to people and we were laughing like because I was like, we didn't do things I thought good enough. Like when this woman's crying and she's talking, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm staring at her now. Now I'm staring at her. And now she's crying. What am I doing? Pull my energy back. And then my friend said, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "I said something dumb to this guy." Like, and she's like, I'm like, we're like coming together. It's okay because we didn't know what to do with the space. There was so much intensity in these experiences, and we want everybody to be held and honored. But it was good to be able to talk about it because we saw where our areas were. And I'm like, that's really interesting because where we are in our own nervous systems and bodies will unconsciously, consciously reflect in those spaces. And so I go, wow, like this is really interesting. And as I say that, I don't know if you're familiar, there's this I saw this how to support someone after stillbirth. Like it's a list and it's based on a little boy named Liam. And his mom made this beautiful list that I've shared all over the place throughout the years where what do you do when someone has a stillbirth? And because people have asked me, like, I don't know what to do. They want to run away, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
I can't touch that. I don't know what to do. And people do. And it's like, well, they probably need you to like check in, but don't ever. My big thing is when someone passes away, you don't say, what do you need? What do you
Yeah.
feel about that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
So I think it's super well intentioned. I just think when someone is deep in the throes of grief, especially in that first 3 months when they're in shock,
yeah,
um, it's like, when you have a baby and everything changes kind of every 3 months, you have like a growth spurt or a change. I feel like it's that way with grief too. Like the first 3 months are literally just shock. And then the next 3 months, it's like it's sort of sinking in. And it's so hard to know what you need when you're grieving. It is, some people are really good at expressing it. And I think there's a sort of a growing cultural acceptance of
mm-hmm.
that. Um, but honestly, it's a lot of it's just how do I get through the day? And so I think that if people really want to help, um, rather than asking, it can be, hey, I'm going to drop off a meal, or hey, I'm going to come
Yes,
fold your laundry, or hey, if I'm going to come take your kid for an afternoon, or, and, give them an opportunity to say no if that's not what they want, but like, or make two suggestions, like I can either take your kid or do your laundry. What do you want
I
me to do?
like that. I like that. Yes.
And then they can say, oh my God, that would be amazing. And it is hard to accept help. We are not a culture in North America that grows up, like, we are not taught how to be interdependent, right? There's such a focus on independence with children.
Yes.
And I hate it. It's like we don't want to be
Mm.
codependent. We don't want to be too
Yeah.
dependent, but we don't want to be so independent that we cannot function. So interdependence is the goal. But so
Mm.
many of us, we're Gen X, like you and I are Gen X, right? Like, are you? Yeah.
I'm not a
So,
millennial. I know people think I am, but I'm not. Sorry. I'm up
yeah.
there.
So we're the
Yeah.
generation that was like latchkey kids and like
Yeah.
go out and play till the
Go
lights
out and I won't
come
see you
on.
forever until the sun sets. Yeah. And
Exactly.
trust
So
and faith.
it is hard for us to ask for help. I also think it's hard for every generation,
Yeah.
especially when you are used. We get to a certain age and we think we should be self-sufficient, right? We should pay our own bills,
Yeah.
we should do our own laundry. And it's hard to ask for help, maybe from a partner, but like from a larger community, that can be really
Yes.
challenging. And so saying to someone, my go-to is always food because then they don't have to think about feeding themselves or their kid. And it can be really hard to eat when we're grieving. So, or to eat healthy food when we're
Oh,
grieving.
yeah. Yes.
So we always do meal trains. Like anytime anyone
Yeah.
with my friend group, it's like anytime someone's sick or has
Yeah.
a death in the family or just anything, it's like let's do a meal train. They get food every other day or every third day for a month. Um, and it makes such a difference. And then yeah, especially if someone has a little kid, like has young kids,
Mm.
something that will take some of that pressure off of them so that they can actually have some space to themselves to grieve or to do their laundry or to have a nap or whatever they need to do. Um, I think that kind of stuff, like really concrete, or just sitting with, like, I'm bringing coffees over and I want you to talk to me about your loved one, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
and they can say no, you can give them an out. But so much of what happens, especially with it happens with everyone, but especially baby loss, infant loss, child loss,
Mm.
people are afraid to bring it up because they
Yes.
think, oh my gosh, if I bring up this child's name, I'm going to make the parent feel worse. Well, no, the parent feels terrible already. And they want to know that other people are thinking of their child, right? So, like, I still have a friend who texts me every year, 15 years later. She texts me every
Oh,
year on Ben's anniversary. Um, like I just sadly, a friend of my daughter's ended her life recently. And
mm.
so I've been making sure that I check in with the mom every month,
Yeah.
like when it's a month, and do some other things too. And I'm watching her on social media and how she's navigating this horrific
Mm.
experience. And um, we all do it differently. And one of the things that I love to tell people is you can't really do grief wrong if you're honoring
Mm. Mhm.
if you're honoring yourself in the process, you can't do grief wrong. There are some dangerous moments, obviously, where, like, if we get so stuck in the story, so stuck in victimhood that we cannot move forward, that can be
Yeah.
problematic. But grief can look like anything. It can look like headaches. It can look like panic attacks. It can look
Mm.
like
Mhm.
depression. It can look like um needing to build something in a wood shop. It can look like anything.
Yeah.
And I think we have such cultural judgment around how people are supposed to grieve. And I don't like that. I just always tell people you are the expert in your own grief.
I love that. You're speaking my language because it's so true. There's no, like you said, it could be anger, it could be sorrow, it could be like who knows? It could be so many things. And I know from my own grief journey, I did things like I did art. Art I would
Hmm.
never do. I did poetry. I have a lot of grief poems that I've shared more openly, and I'm like, that felt really good. And then, now I just feel like I don't have trauma grief right now. I just feel like we're just buddies, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay, like it just comes and goes when it wants to, and I'm not going to push it away. That's my whole big thing, right?
Hmm.
It's like, for me, I'm like, no, it's just going to be wherever it needs to be, when it wants to be, because that's just life. Like, and we can grieve other things. Like I said, like my kids hit puberty and I'm like grieving that, I'm like, oh, outside of death, which I know the death of people and beings is a whole other thing. And I totally get what you're saying about the food piece, because for me, that was what I needed. my friend, when she got the news my father passed, she was like, "What do you need?" And I'm just like, "Nothing." I was just like shocked, just shocked. And I was just like, just in the throes of just massive whole body weeping. Like I actually felt like I was getting a fever because I was holding it back a
Mm.
little bit because I actually was working when it like I had to work and I was like, keep it together and just do this,
Mhm.
get through this. And then, but my body was like, it felt like a feet. And then afterwards, it was like, you know, and then I'll never forget. And it just holds my heart. She brought me fresh soup in a jar she made and bread. And I literally didn't eat for like a whole day. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like I literally would just
Yeah.
not eat anything. I'm not
Yeah.
asking like you said, and I'm just like, but it brought life to me. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh, sustenance. And then she did ask me about my father, which was really beautiful. It was like that's what I needed to like, well, let me talk about him a little bit and just kind of, this is my more recent loss, but I'm like, huh. But I really appreciate what you're saying is like bridging together different ways. Like there's not one way to do it. And I think that's where we really need to keep telling, our culture of like, yeah, it's fine. And I think that's why I really appreciate when people are in grief, like groups or circles. But I know that could be super intense for people too. Or even a self-study, I love the
Yeah.
books. You probably know Stephen Jenkinson and like Francis Weller. Like these people write these astonishing books about like just death and life and grief, and especially Francis Weller. He just came up with a new book too, and his whole thing is like we're in apprenticeship with grief, and
Mm.
going to the altars of it. And I'm just like, yeah, like where we to me when I even say those words, it's like permission. It's like permission.
Mhm. Yeah. And we can never escape it. I think there's a lot of what happens in our society that is about escaping grief, right? It's our fear of death, it's our fear of loss, it's our fear of pain. But if we can learn to sit with it and just because grief unexpressed tends to come out sideways, right? And it can be expressed in many different ways. One of the books that it's actually like a textbook that I read I think it was shortly after my degree. Maybe it was during my degree, but it's called Men Don't Cry, Women Do. And
Mm,
and one of the things they talk about is this continuum of grieving styles from intuitive to instrumental. And intuitive is someone who needs to cry and needs to talk about their feelings and talk about their loss. And they just really are an emotional sort of being in the loss. And then instrumental grievers are they give an example of a dad whose child I think was a pilot and their plane crashed and wasn't found, and so he would get in his
mm,
own plane and like fly and look for the it was he needed to do something, right? And some people
doing,
need to go
yes.
into a woods. It's like with their hands, with their physicality, they need to solve a problem. They need to the kind of people who form nonprofits because of something that happened to someone they love, like. And then there's the continuum, anything from one end to the other. And so I think we have a lot of judgment on how people grieve, especially if we're in partnership. It can be
Mm.
very much like, I'm grieving this way, you should be grieving this way too.
Yes, I did that by the
um
way a little bit. I'm like, what,
it's
you got no
really
feelings?
it's easy to have happen,
Yes.
and then so there's judgment that happens, and we can be judging our partners or our friends or anybody else, like if there's collective grief like we had during the pandemic, right? We had thousands of
Yes.
people dying. Everybody's handling their grief differently. um and then one thing I know to be true is that if you do not acknowledge and express your grief, it will come
Mm,
out in some way, and that often comes out sideways as anger, as like sniping with someone, as um just destructive behaviors, that kind of
yes.
thing. So that it's like needing to learn to sit with it, because we cannot be alive without it,
Mm,
right? Like I'm helping my
mm,
parents right now. My mom just had surgery.
mm,
Things went kind of south after the surgery. One of the doctors had me worried that that was it for her. She's
mm.
okay. But they're 81 and 87. I know that it's
Yeah.
coming, right? At some point, we all have to deal with it. And so there's anticipatory grief, there's
Oh,
like the
yeah.
grief of change, there's the grief of my daughter not being home, also with the excitement of, you know, being happy for her and
Yeah.
excited for her. But so I just do a lot of sitting with it, you know, a lot of like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm feeling this way in this moment. I
Yes.
know that it's not going to last forever. What gets problematic is if I spin the story in my head nonstop, and so that I'm constantly in the emotion of it.
Yes.
But if I can just allow the purity of the emotion to move through me, it only lasts like 90 seconds to 3 minutes, and then you get a breath, and
There
then
you go.
you go under the next wave, and then you get a breath,
Mm.
then you go under the next wave. So,
So I really, I loved how you just shared that. I feel like that it just feels like healthy grief, like it has space to do whatever it needs to do. And I really loved how you shared that, like, I need to go out there and I did, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that's brilliant. Yeah, like there's like, it's not like, oh, you have to go sit and cry right now, which can be a part of it, but that's not like what you have to do because that's what I think people think. Like, oh, but like you said, there's so many different outlets and ways that people are connecting and trying to understand it. So I have a few more thoughts running through my head, questions. I want to hear, so did we just pass Benjamin's birthday this year yet?
end of July.
Okay. So how does that look every year? This felt like a really important thing to ask. And I know a lot are
Mm,
tuning in going, I just lost my son. I lost my daughter. I can't go on. I can't live. Like, what does this look like? And give us that, you know, 15, right? Did you say 15? How old?
hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this would have been 15. He would have been 15 this
So
year.
what does that look like over?
So,
Yeah. Am I saying that right? I'm hoping I'm explaining that. Yeah.
yes, what
Okay.
you're asking makes sense. And again, I think it's super individual. I know people who do the most beautiful thing, like a ritual every year. For example, this one family makes ephemeral art. They'll go out and collect leaves and make a
Mm,
mandala, and that'll be that. And then they know it blows away, right? And they do the same thing every year. I know a lot of people do the same thing every year. It's a ritual. A friend of mine, after her dad died, would release a balloon every year
mm,
with a message on it, or whatever it is. I beat myself up for a while about not
mm,
having a ritual every year, but it didn't work for me. And so I finally came to terms with that. So my body knew every year when the anniversary was coming up. My
mm.
body would start to, I would have physical sensations. I would get
Wow.
sad. And then I'd go, oh yeah, it's almost July 29th.
Wow.
Um, or
Yeah.
it would be July 29th, but I wouldn't remember what day it was. And
Yeah.
like one year we were husband's family, we were all together, all 20 of us. And I was like, why am I feeling so heavy and so sad?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Oh, right. Like, and so for me, it's become important to mark it in some way, to acknowledge it publicly, to acknowledge it with my
Mm,
family. Some years I will buy a cake and put it on my ancestor altar and sing to him. Some years I will go out in nature and do something. Some years we will just talk about him um, as a family. Like it really depends.
So what do we do for him this year, if you don't mind
What did
sharing?
we do this year? So actually, this year we were with my parents, helping them
Oh,
prep
okay.
for a move out of my childhood home, which they've
Oh,
been
wow,
in for
that's a big
21
deal.
years.
Yeah. You're like,
So
wow.
it was a really intense time and a really intense day, and there was just a
Mm,
lot of grief happening. And so
mm,
it was really just a moment of acknowledgement in the wildness of the entire experience we were all having. It was just like, okay, it's today and we love you and,
mm.
we miss you. And because I talk to him all the time anyway, he feels very present for me. And so I feel like that marking of that anniversary doesn't have to be as grand as it once did. At 15 years, I can
Mm-hmm.
just mark it in a more muted way, almost like turning 53 was not a big deal. We never, turning 50 was a big deal. Turning 53 was not a big
Yeah, I
deal.
see.
So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, I get that. Okay. So it's like
yeah.
this to me when you shared that, what I was just like kind of feeling into my own space was like you're in connection with him all the time and his own light body just keeps evolving with you and you're just like, "Hey, hey, my love, hey, my son," like and you just keep seeing where that goes because as we know with life and death, it is a great mystery and it's supposed to be. And yet you show up fully as in your own heart space with that connection with him. And I actually really appreciate that because the more you talk about him, the more I feel his energy, which is like a problem that I have with energy.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, here we go, more and more energy coming up. Because I feel like he's evolved so much. He's evolved so much. He's not really a baby anymore. And you get to you get to be with that and forever a baby on some level, but also this is where I feel like we often miss out with our mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts, uncles. We haven't I almost feel like if we get to meet them, but you didn't get a long meeting time, so that's very different. But like these connections we have, they evolve. Like my mother and father, who they once were is not who they are now. Like they have imprinted old memories in the space, but I'm like, wow, but there's something different about how their energy comes into the space, into the frequency they're in. And I just happen to listen sometimes. But I want to encourage others that are tuning in to themselves and baby, like just to, you know, see that evolution. And it sounds like there's an experience in that, like where it's just different. And it's not, I don't want to say it's time, but it's evolving, you know?
Yeah, I think it's my own evolution,
Yeah.
as well as his. I mean, I didn't, my own evolution as a like a spiritual being in a flesh body has changed in the 15 years since he
Mm,
was stillborn too. And so my experience of him being so close was not always this way.
mm-hmm.
Um, I actually probably have a stronger relationship with him now than I did for the first 10 years. And for the first 10 years, it was probably more important for me to mark the ritual dates and like his original due date, his
Mm.
death date, his all of those things. They felt more important when I didn't have as strong a connection to his energy. And now that I have a stronger connection to
Mm,
his energy,
mm-hmm.
those dates are still important, but there's not as much weight on them, you know like I don't have to beat myself up if I don't do it perfectly, if I don't mark it the way I think I should. I can just give myself more grace. And I will say too that the pain shifts. Like
Mm,
I every we had friends. My daughter, when she started kindergarten, she started going to the school with this girl, and her younger brother was born the same day that Ben was stillborn. And so when I see him, I think, oh,
wow.
that's what Ben could have been.
Mm,
And also when I see children who are severely disabled in some way,
mm,
I think, oh, that's who Ben could have been. Because if he had survived at such a young gestational age, he likely would have been severely disabled.
wow.
And so I
Okay.
just have these little touch points with
Yes.
sort of that if he had lived reality. Um, and there have been moments where, and I think it's part of the process, like, is there something I could have done differently? Is there something someone else
Mm,
could have done differently? Is there, and I think that's normal to kind of go through
yeah.
those questions. But what I realized was I can't change it, and
I
so
When you
why
share
beat
that,
myself up?
I always feel like that's the grief language when it's like you should have done something. You could,
Yes.
because I mean, because I learned through my own experience, and when mom, brother, dad, cousin, aunt, my husband, I'm going, why do I always think that I could have prevented it? I'm like, that's weird. So I had to explore that and go, that's grief, Kelly. That is not real in the sense of like, what are you going to make? Your parents were not well, they got sick. Like, what do you mean you're going to prevent it? And I was like, whoa. And then I realized I can see it with other moms, like when they start to go into these interesting language, and I'm going, oh, that's just grief. Like, and I do kind of play it off very gently like that because it's almost like don't attach to it. Like it's just, because you can't. Like this is where you are. And it's like you said, it's like the going back and reversing. I think we all do that, by the way, and like restructuring it in your head. And it's just like, whoa, like I think that could be dangerous and we do have to watch that. But I know we all do it. And then it's like, okay, and then, obviously evolving through that and like, okay, what does this look like? And I wonder too, when you were sharing, like, you have an earth child that needs you. So I'm sure that's like it's asking of you like to be present with her and it's not uncommon. I've heard of people that felt like they didn't have any strong connections like you have a strong connection with him, but like someone's like, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't really connect with this person and they passed away. Now we're like best friends in spirit world." I'm like, "What?" Like I've heard this story before and I'm like, "That's interesting." So I do understand what you're saying and those that are tuning in like you can like develop it differently later and there's different frequency openings I would call them to then merge in a different way and then you get to go, oh, okay, like let's do this. So
Yeah.
I know we're coming to the end, but I want to hear a little bit like, so what does this mean about your own life's work? Like, where does that? Yeah.
So one of the things that Ben Stolberg did for me was to help me sort of stop spinning in shoulds. And so I really and I go in and out of this, right? But the grief taught me that I needed to be creative because I had been very creative growing up and then I had kind of cut that part of myself off a little bit when I stopped dancing professionally and then stopped
Mm,
acting um and so the grief was like, no, this your body needs this creativity, your body needs this movement, your body needs this healing. And so, doing the energy work, writing, those are things that got really solidified through the grief process. And then um I just believe that everything lives in our bodies and we can either, and this is not a sort of blame the victim kind of like you didn't do this right so you're having cancer, like I don't
yeah,
like that
yeah.
thinking
I don't
necessarily.
like that
I don't
either.
I don't think there's any
Yeah,
helpfulness in
yeah.
that. But hey, it's living in our bodies. So how, like some people might get it out by running. Some people
Mm,
might get it out by dancing. Some people might get it out by hitting a tennis ball really hard. Like it just, we need to let it move. And so one of the things that I really have realized is that, um, well, I mean, my daughter has left home. I feel like I have all this time and
mm,
I get to sort of reinvent what I want to do now. I have options and which direction do I want to take my life. Um, and and yeah, I go back to those nights of dancing in my nightgown in the living room and how healing that was and how much information is in our bodies. Like our bodies remember trauma and they also remember joy. And so
mm,
how can we access that? A lot of the writing I do, I belong to a program that uses gateless writing, and gateless writing is all about getting into your body and writing from that place. So
mm.
getting into your body, and then they drop a word in, and what comes up with that word,
Oh, I
right?
love
It could
that.
be
Yeah.
it could be anything, and it could be a memory, it could be a fictional story, it doesn't
Mm,
matter, but
mm-hmm.
it's like the body just has so much wisdom. um Yeah, so I'm exploring how I want to move forward with that. I mean, part of me is like, well, am I going to go back and get another master's degree? Am I, what am I going to do? But it's all good. Like I feel like I have learned so much
Mm,
through the process of grieving my son, through the process of raising my daughter, through the process of being married, through the process of like being in community with people, through like it's all just
hmm.
juicy and hard and beautiful. And I don't know. I mean, I think we can reinvent ourselves
Oh,
as often as
absolutely.
we want.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want you to share just ways that people can find you and read your stories and connect with your platforms.
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's old, it needs redoing, but it's alanasheeren.com, and that's my energy work and also all of the writing that I did um, right after Benjamin died. Like the first year of daily writing is still available there. You just
Oh,
have to go to
nice.
Life
Yeah.
After Benjamin and search that. Um, Instagram, I'm at Alana Sheeren. I have a Substack called Kind Humaning. It's pretty new, but I'm hoping to be there a little more regularly. Um, those are probably the best places. Instagram, Substack, and my website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any final last love words for everybody?
There is one thing I wanted to say quickly before, and that is there's an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which takes photos of stillborn. It's volunteer photographers who come and take photos. And there was a nurse who made sure that they came into photos of Benjamin. I
Mm.
did not hold him. I don't have photos with him. And that's one of my only regrets about the whole thing
Aw.
is that I don't have photos with him. So I just wanted to mention them just so people are aware of
Yeah,
them.
thank you.
And they're almost everywhere. But I would say so on my Substack right now is a little story about this to-do list that my daughter wrote when she was 11. She came up to me and she had this to-do list in her hand, and it said to-do list at the top, and then it said love, 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 all the way down, and then it said everything else at the bottom. And she'd crossed out some of the loves, right? And so when she left for college, we turned that into an art card, and it's a fundraiser for World Central Kitchen. And I just feel like that is our to-do list as human beings. Like we just need to love. We need to love
Mm.
each other. We need to love ourselves. You know, grace, kindness, compassion, showing up, being present, listening to people, like being with each other in community through the good and the hard, finding our people and showing up with love and as love is like the best we can do.
Well, thank you so much, Alana, for being here. It was so amazing to have you, to see you, to just thank you again for sharing this story with all of us.
Oh my gosh, Kelly, thank you so much. It was great to talk with you. I loved it.
And I want to thank everybody for joining episode 226, October, Light Communication, Living and Loving After the Loss of Benjamin. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly Meehan. Please join my community and stay in touch with monthly energy rants, Spirit Baby poetry, and get access to Spirit Baby 101 with tips and practices at my newsletter at newearthchildren.com. And join me on Instagram with lives at Spirit Baby Medium, and join the Mighty Networks, the Spirit Baby Collective membership, and Motherhood to Mediumship. Remember, you are the heart that holds communication, and it is your time to connect. Come share in the great shift of your mind and the true spirit of your heart with Spirit Baby Communication.